Practice is an ongoing process. And the perceptions relative to time, space, energy, and matter, which include all the things pertinent or relevant to those topics, are basically simply and always that, to be processed as perceptions. And when such perceptions are used for making what we would call solid and or concrete identifications, then you're defeating your spiritual process or purpose, and you might be empowering a karmic process. That means furthering the cause of bondage and infinite limitation relative to cause and effect programs that, while being created, are not consciously dealt with properly.
So these karmic patterns seem like they can be inherited or show up from parents, or also...
They are consistent with what the word ancestry means, which is really a way of looking at or perceiving the time track. Ancestry is a time track designation. I mean, it's what you inherited because of, by way of time past. So that implies that you're being in the present the effect of time past, which is true. And so when you talk about time mastery and taking birth in the spirit of time mastery, what we're trying to do then, from the viewpoint of time mastery, not from the point of view of astrology. Astrology's point of view is saying that, well, you are that, that's all you are, and the story forever. Time mastery says you're never that, you can't be that, so you better not be any of it at any time. Because time is a force in regards to the life experience. It is a force. And it's a paradoxical force because it is created out of nowness, but as soon as you say nowness, it's lost. That's already past, whatever you say, which gives you an idea of the paradox of time, right? The problem with time and such, and why it's so difficult for people to transcend this, which seems to be existing completely under its own laws and by way of itself. So then we see that there's now, but then there's no now, because as you say there's now, it's gone. That now is gone, but we are living in the awareness that is nowness, continual nowness. See, regardless of the conditions that are set in motion already, which is what time mastery enables a person to adjust themselves to, rather than be and become. So this very delicate process of being nowness as awareness, free of designations, conditions, qualities, pattern cycles, and all kinds of phenomena that have to do with what we would call the solar system's problem of being the solar system unto itself. Karmic suffering is due to identification, unconscious identification relative to time, space, energy, and matter dimensions. Awakening beyond the ignorance and unconsciousness of such levels of perception and karmic understanding of machinery, then that could more or less put a person in terms of practice on the path of waking up and becoming enlightened or ensounded and transcending the wheel ultimately by not being one iota of it at any point, with all due respect to what it appears to be. What it appears to be. Who one appears to be. And what one is or appears to be subject to. This is the question. And so from the point of view of practice, the solution is don't be any of it, but respect it for what it is, as an appearance. You're not your birth time, nobody is. But it happened like this. It's gone. You're not the time of your conception, but it happens like that, and it's gone. And then you're not your death experience, because it happens when it actually happens, when you actually literally perfectly die, and you're no longer alive. So you're gone. Mm-hmm. So to freeze by virtue of, let's say, mental processes, freeze data of any sort, of any dimension, is either to create karma that's going to work for you or work against you. Identification is already karma that's working against most people, in a manner of speaking, just as it works for most people, because without it you don't have anything to communicate from. You need a certain degree of karma to be a valid individual relative to society and other peeps who you are either cooperating with or relating to or associated with, or let's say family of, and so on. So it's planetary peeps, and being born into a circumstance of individual appearance, right? Individual time, individual, say, world, then we have that on a massive scale as reality, consisting of individuals ad infinitum, infinite individuals in their own heads, in their own times, in their own worlds, in their own universes, and creating continually as a result of that their problems, right? Their suffering. Right? Mm-hmm.
So how can understanding...
So the birth time. How do you understand some of this relative to the possible birth time? The appearance of the birth time. Because it appears, but it's gone as soon as it appears. It's part of an ongoing process, so it doesn't, it's not real as something that has remained the case. So it doesn't remain the case. So it's a reference for a moment in the process of the continuum. So we have to be aware of the fact that if there's anything valid relative to your time portrait that pertains to the time that you were born, just that flash moment, that nanosecond of birth, when you're born, that second, that moment, and you see relevance to it, that is part of the, let's say, the mystery of the universe, to see how just that one moment shows up as a system by which to guide your life, or see or find your life, or recognize or realize who you are from a karmic point of view. And so, again, when we're speaking about the science of time mastery relative to astrologic data, then we're talking about finding out, if at all possible, if there are high points, low points, and relatively useful information about stresses, releases, and or focus in terms of a purpose on the earth. And if there is a message inherent in that, and what that message is, and how to best go about completing or fulfilling that message, if it happens to be a message that seems to suggest or imply some degree of productivity relative to service regarding other peeps.
It seems like there's also the for some warnings, there's some conflict as well as harmony that shows up
Conflict?
from time.
Well, there's time. There's time, that means there's tension. Because there's time, there's tension. See? There's pressure. Because there is time, there's pressure. And all of that has to do with the perception and the very nature of the universe, which is a system of tension and release, because everything is moving. Everything is moving relative to one another. So you get too close, there's pressure. It's tension. Too far away, there's a different kind of pressure and tension of expansion. So the universe is this mechanism, this biosphere of living, moving parts, right? They're all living. Rock is living. It's a different level of living. It's kind of like, the rock level of existence and living. And melted down and seen properly, the crystallized form then has a lot of information and data that's seemingly frozen in time that can be of use to other people. So it's still living in a sense as frozen, See? But what is frozen? It's existing. So it's intelligence, it's data that can be used at a certain level for certain peeps to have a better understanding of what that rock or what that moment in time signifies relative to the rest. It's all about what the moment and the result or effect or whatever's showing up representing the moment, the device, let's say, is corresponding to as it relates to the whole, or more than itself. See? And this is how science observes things, not just the one thing, but the one thing relative to everything. See? So when we're talking about time mastery, then it's seeing the one thing relative to the everything that is beyond appearances. So seeing the thing itself, which is the appearance, relative to where it comes from, which means the non-appearance. See, the source of appearance, the no appearance. And in the no appearance, that means the soul or the awareness state, the intelligence as spiritual energy or pure light awareness, then that is something which is more part of the continuum beyond appearances, which in fact, without which we would have no ability to perceive anything. So that's what enables us to be the illusion we perceive to be the problem that we are in agreement with since birth, which we created, we are, and we destroy, all at the same time. We're in the process, because we took birth, of disbirthing. That means dying, and we're dying. That means disintegrating slowly but surely, going back to our origin from zip, zero, nada. See? Nada. Nada, nada. Coming. So the rest of it is symbolic terminology that's subject to, based upon mathematics, which gives you your logarithmic positions for all the planets, right, astrophysically speaking. And then we need an interpretation, some kind of psychologic overview or comprehension of this relative to what we're talking about occurs as effects on the planet Earth.
So, during the interpretation, and also during the...
No particular interpretation. I mean, you can say interpretation, how a human interprets such data, yes, yes, whatever that data is.
What is the function of wisdom and creativity while viewing someone's chart?
Well, creativity then, if there is such a thing, applying to this, is to make sure that everything is not seen as a negative, but seen as a positive, so that there's no problem. There is no, what is the word, hesitation or lack of forward momentum. See? In other words, from the spiritual viewpoint, time is something you work with. Time is something that you use. Time is not something that you victimize yourself by because of ignorance or stupidity or egoic, narcissistic BS. See, that would have you consider yourself more important relative to a particular time and its configuration. That's narcissism, and it's what it means. That's self-limitation. You're just looking at your face in the mirror relative to time. We have to see beyond that. Say, yes, we have a time, like we have skin, we have a body, but we have to see through that, not see ourselves as that, but see through that to see ourselves as everything else but that. I mean, see life, see the universe, and make the self less important in terms of an introversion of self-reflection, that is being kind of involved with yourself as limitation or form, right, or a moment in time, as distinct from going beyond that and seeing yourself as the process, the continuum, beyond time, beyond form, beyond your face, beyond your signs, beyond all of the implications of what it is, because people collapse under the weight of knowing such things without understanding. It's wood for the fire to begin with. All knowledge is wood for the fire. All experience is wood for the fire. Spiritual practice. Whether that knowledge and data is absolutely astonishingly accurate and precise to a fault or a virtue in each individual's case, no one is that. See? No one is that. So, in other words, this whole thing is a miracle as it is. It's miraculous that anyone is here to see anything. That we are in this form for the moment in history of the universe, not just the planet. That we're able to perceive anything like this. See? Anything without science, without artistic, without philosophic conditioning. We are able to be it all is miraculous. It's profound. It's a wonder, the universe. That any being can be anything. And how it is. So what we are talking about, getting back to the purpose of practice, is to maintain our option to be enlightened beings, rather than incarcerated beings into, let's say, less than an enlightened being because of our preferences to, or to be amused or entertained or fascinated by sort of lesser systems or symbols or devices or lesser recognitions or realizations. Hugh. Realization is beyond time, but it's also being awake to what time is and how it appears when it shows up as. Because life is subject to and or governed by, if not controlled and ruled by, the processes and forces of time, which are controlling forces. Which are forces that, in their own way, make everything appear to be good for peeps, or depending on what the time is and what the changes are, not so good. To say then there may be bad times and good times. Maybe all of us know we have good times and bad times, so-called, right? Tense times that are painful or strange or testing, so difficult times. So this is the nature of it, to dance with the times, because there's no escaping the times. Now, the issue here is how much of the bad times are self-created, rather than more or less universally determined by some kind of cosmic process, apart from your egotism, your ignorance. So then we have to understand that often, in the case of human beings who are unenlightened, that means not really paying attention to anything properly, they are creating, because of their ignorance, their resistance, their lack of wanting to expand into, let's say, a bigger consciousness or higher consciousness, more open consciousness, then they are, by habit, creating the bondage that they experience. It's there. It's already present. So, closed-mindedness, is its own payment, its own hell. But because fear has something to do with it, fear of the unknown and programming from the ancestral time track, that means regardless of what the rising signs and moon signs of all the parents were, the result is still the same. That means time-bound. See, without recognition of details, time-bound. It means unenlightened and suffering it, being asleep. Whether they call themselves this sign or that sign, the sleep is still there. See, so knowing about this is maybe helpful if it is going to open you up not so much to just the solar system and, let's say, the zodiac belt as such, which is just looking at illusion for the most part, but seeing that that's a veil that we have to see beyond. It's a mask we have to see beyond. We have to see beyond time and the creative cycle. We have to see into the moment to the degree where there's nowness that defies all time and all recognition and perception, where there's clear being. So that we have access to the enlightened mind, diamond mind, doje mind, to the degree that we are clear in the moment. So it's a matter of being that awareness, that awakeness, that sharpness, precise sort of being here. That defies perception, defies ignorance, defies confusion, defies all karma, defies life and death, because it is what it is, fundamentally as atomic intelligence, which survives transformation. It's the very essence of the whole process of existence, cosmically, universally, and personally. And so we need to be in resonance with these forces, this fact, otherwise we're going to be taken for a ride of confusion and distraction and disappointment, saying, oh shucks, you go to your parents and say, why did you have to have me at that time? Couldn't you have a better time to have me? Couldn't you have had sex at a better time so that I wouldn't have these problems and these issues right now? Did you have to, really? Have you ever thought of that, peeps? Yeah. Now it's clear that there's a process of agreement that precedes the birth from a spiritual viewpoint, and the birth, we can say, is approved, agreed to. And all the so-called problems, as perceived, are wood for the fire of awakening and enlightened wisdom and being. Whether people recognize it or not, the pressures, the hardships are all essentially great and only wood for the fire of waking up and knowing more, say, being more aware.
You said there's no escape. No escaping your time.
Well, in other words, there's no escaping your time is what? See, your time is what? Because you are your time. There's no escaping what you are. So you are your time of nowness, your beingness. That is your time. So in that case, your time by itself, as it is Buddha. See, it's awake. See, it just is what it is. So Huda, in this case, the sound of what it is, silence. So it's distinct from that, but relevant to that. Maybe same thing as that, but different level of perception. Silence. Now, there may be aspects of the same thing. There may be totally different sides of the same thing.
So as now is
practice. As now is practice. And as now you have your perception of time as no consequence, and then at the same time you have your perception of time as karmic process, which implies consequence and not always pleasurable effects. So, because the body is what it is, that means it's a work in progress which doesn't change in its limitations and in its functions and dysfunctionality, but your intelligence, which is not that, can adjust itself to make whatever the limitations and dysfunctioning appear to be workable, useful, even gifts, as good disabilities. Say, good wood for the fire. Comment. So this is more important. Practice then is more important than having an identity which is going to be crippling anybody. Okay. Distorting the reality of, let's say, our original divinity regarding our pure spirit soul nature from the beginning. Okay. The perfection of that as awareness by itself. Good. For now, Hugh. So there is no identity to begin with. There is the, let's say, mechanism by which the need for an identification apart from this, that, or whatever shows up, because we're capable of that. But that where that arises from is already the everything and the nothing. Okay? So that's our true identity, is our source function, our original nature, which is universal and cosmic. In essence, or heartness. See, it's already that. The rest is programming to make it more finite, more believable, more attractive, see, more full of BS, more usable, right? More wastable, more exploitable, see, more this, that, whatever out here. But originally, there is no identity, which means from the state of no identity, we can assume any identity, which is the good news. You can be anything. You can act like actors, from now until the day you die, and never be any one thing, because originally everyone is everything and everyone, but not programmed to function as that, because basically it's not functional depending on what your karma is. It could be totally dysfunctional to think you're any more than what you are, or what your simple function of identity would be based upon who your parents raised you to be. what your people feel is your true you based upon the time track and, let's say, family culturing, which is part of your conditioning, but not necessarily the true you, the true family you, perhaps, depending on what that amounts to, right? In terms of your education and who your family was and what their values were, and what you assumed, what you took on, and so on and so forth. See, what they made you into, right? What you were created into, what kind of creature you are, or sub-creature, or super creature, doesn't matter. Whatever they made you, see. And even whatever they made you, it's not who you are. That's basically the understanding here. It's the whatever they made you. See? And you're willing to be the whatever they made you to the degree that you can be that for them, if you choose to be that, but you're infinitely more, but you may not be willing to be anymore. See? And this is also true of the fact that we are the zodiac. We're not just a sign. We're the whole thing, the whole 9 yards, the whole 12 signs. Each one of us, every second, is the composite influence of the whole thing. It's never been any less, but it has been presumed to be, something else. What it's made to be is a business, an occupation, a scientific, actually very scientific process. And since it requires a certain kind of psychic edge to it to be functioning at, let's say, an effective level, successfully, correctly, then a lot of people are left out of it because they don't want to view things that way. So, that's not, you can't prove that. That's not true of me. Not me. I know who I am. That's a box I won't fit in. See, I can't be put in that box. See.
So, despite everything, the chart, the culturing,
it's an X-ray. It's totally valid, but only so far. And it does definitely delineate patterns and cycles because it is a time thing, which everything is of time. So there's a lot to be gained by understanding the solar cycle for what it is, the 12 phases or the 4 seasons, however one wants to perceive that, is 4, 12, 6, and 6. See, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Or whatever. See, however you're able to perceive it, because different nations at different times saw the annual cycle of, let's say, equinox to equinox, summer solstice to summer solstice differently. They had different breakdown, what it was, different days, different weeks, different months. Whatever it is that works, great. For the people who are working with that kind of system of sound, fine. Because the need to understand time relative to agriculture is very critical. See? And that's something which we need to understand, that time rules. I mean, there's something about time we need to understand and comprehend, because your body is operating from heartbeats and brain waves, all subject to time and cycle of vibration and so on. So all of this is proving that we are time machines. But again, we are space beings in the time machine, spirits in the flesh body that are here to rule over time or work cooperatively with the cow, the system, the universe of time, so as to succeed at what our purpose and mission is. So we have to understand time to be able to work around it, not to be it. You can't be it, because it is what your body is, but that's not who you are. That's what you're working through. So to the degree that it's a paradox is good. It is a paradox. You can't believe what you see and what you hear completely and take it out of context. You were born at a time, but you were conceived at another time. You're living in another time, and you're going to be dead at another time. So we're talking about infinite times that are also part of this process. And so without getting into the cosmic comprehension of this, which is mind-boggling, say, yes, that's good. For now, that's useful. Comment.